When you begin to pray consistently, something curious happens. At first, it feels awkward, like speaking into an empty room. The words tumble out, hesitant and unsure, and you wonder if they rise any higher than the ceiling. But as days pass, and your lips form the habit, prayer ceases to be a ritual of words. It becomes a living conversation. You discover that prayer is not about bending heaven to your will, but about bending your will toward heaven. You thought you were summoning God, but in truth He was summoning you, and each time you return, a quiet transformation takes place. Your scattered heart is gathered, your restless thoughts are tamed, and your desires, those wild, stubborn things, begin to be reshaped. Consistency in prayer is not a ladder climbed in haste, but a path walked daily. A single prayer may seem small, as if it changes nothing. Yet the steady rhythm, the repeated return, works as water upon stone. Slowly, silently, the soul is carved into something new. And one morning, almost without noticing, you realize you no longer pray to get things. You pray to become someone. What happens then? Your anger softens where it once flared. Your burdens, though still heavy, feel somehow carried with you. Even silence in prayer begins to speak, because you understand that the one who listens does not measure your words, but your heart. To pray consistently is not to unlock some secret power. It is to open the door of your life daily to the one already waiting. And as you do, you find that prayer changes the world, not because it alters every circumstance, but because it first alters you. So if prayer feels small, do not despise it. If it feels difficult, do not abandon it. For prayer, like a seed, shows its strength only when given time to grow. And when you start praying consistently, you begin to see that the very act of returning again and again is itself the miracle. Prayer reshapes us more than our circumstances. Prayer reshapes us more than our circumstances. It is one of those truths that does not become clear at first glance. Most people step into prayer with the hope of changing something outside themselves. A difficulty weighs them down, and they look to heaven for release. A door seems shut, and they ask for it to be opened. A wound aches, and they long for it to be healed. There is nothing wrong in this. It is the natural instinct of the heart to call for help when it feels weak. But what begins as a cry for change in the world around us gradually reveals itself to be the hand of God working on the world within us. At first, prayer may feel like an attempt to move mountains, to shift the immovable, to draw down some power that will rearrange events and make them more comfortable. Yet the longer one prays, the more one discovers that prayer is less like pushing at a wall and more like standing in front of a mirror. Every word spoken is heard not only by God, but also by the speaker. In asking, in confessing, in waiting, we are shown what we truly desire, what we truly fear, what we truly love. The soul that prays consistently cannot remain hidden from itself. Prayer uncovers the layers we thought were safely buried. It strips us down until we are seen in the purest light. We begin by asking for circumstances to shift, better health, a kinder world, an easier road. But slowly we learn that the greater need is the shift of our own hearts. Suppose one prays every day for patience with a difficult person. Perhaps the person never changes, never softens, never becomes easier to bear. And yet the one who prays finds something happening. Words of anger that once leapt quickly now hesitate. Thoughts of bitterness that once swelled now shrink. The circumstance remains the same, but the spirit within has been reshaped. It is almost as though the difficult person has been placed there not as an obstacle, but as a sculptor's tool. And prayer is the chisel that refines the soul. Prayer has this paradoxical nature. It is both an act of surrender and an act of transformation. The one who prays must admit, I cannot control this world. and yet in that very surrender discovers a new strength, a new character. The energy once wasted on trying to command every circumstance is redirected into the slow forming of a steadier heart. The problem may not vanish, but the way one meets the problem is utterly changed. This is why prayer reshapes us more than our circumstances. It works from the inside out. The storms of life may continue to rage, but prayer teaches the soul to stand firm, like a tree whose roots sink deep into unseen soil. This reshaping is rarely quick. We are restless creatures who long for immediate results, but prayer refuses to be hurried. It is more like the tide carving the shore, steady and unseen until one day the coastline is different. Every repeated prayer, no matter how weak or distracted, contributes to this hidden work. A heart that prays daily is like clay kept moist in the potter's hands. Without prayer, the clay hardens, stiff and brittle, unwilling to be shaped. With prayer, it remains soft, pliable, ready to be turned into something new. It is important to realize that this transformation does not erase desire. To pray for healing is still natural, to plead for provision is still right, but prayer teaches the soul to hold these requests with open hands. The answer may not come as expected, but the act of consistent prayer means the heart is already being trained to trust, already learning to accept that the giver is wiser than the gift. Over time, the heart prays not only for things to happen, but also to be made ready for whatever happens. That is a far deeper work than the mere shifting of outward events. There is another mystery in how prayer reshapes us. It expands the soul's horizon. Left to ourselves, we tend to pray only for what touches us directly, our needs, our struggles, our circle of concerns. But consistent prayer gradually lifts the eyes beyond the self. One who once prayed only for relief from personal pain finds themselves interceding for others, even for those who are strangers or enemies. Prayer widens the heart until it beats not only for its own burdens, but for the burdens of the world. Such an enlargement cannot be forced. It grows naturally out of the daily practice of being in God's presence. To stand before infinite love again and again is to find our own love stretched, deepened, and purified. Consider also how prayer uncovers motives. When we bring requests day after day, we start to hear the undertones of our own hearts. Perhaps what we thought was a prayer for safety was actually rooted in fear of losing control. Perhaps what we thought was a prayer for success was actually a hunger for approval. By returning again and again, by hearing our own words before the Eternal, we are gently taught the difference between what we think we want and what we truly need. In that unveiling, the soul is slowly reformed. It is not that circumstances no longer matter, but that we begin to see them differently. A hardship becomes not only a barrier, but also an opportunity for growth. A blessing becomes not only a gift to enjoy, but a trust to steward. Over time, prayer reshapes our very identity. We cease to see ourselves as the masters of our fate and begin to live as those who are guided, sustained, and loved. This shift changes how we walk through every circumstance. The anxious person begins to carry peace into the same old difficulties. The resentful person begins to practice forgiveness even while the wound still stings. The fearful person begins to move forward with courage, though the dangers remain. None of this may alter the circumstances themselves, but it transforms the one who lives through them. This is why those who pray consistently often speak of a quiet strength that others cannot quite explain. It is not that their lives are free from hardship, often the opposite is true, but that their inner lives have been altered by steady contact with the divine. They are no longer tossed as wildly by every change in weather because something in them has been anchored. Prayer has reshaped them so deeply that circumstances, though powerful, do not hold the final power over their peace. Consistency in prayer transforms habits into holiness. Consistency in prayer transforms habits into holiness. At first, the idea may sound too simple, almost like a neat phrase meant to inspire. Yet behind it lies a reality that touches the deepest part of human life. Habits are the grooves into which our souls settle. Every small act, repeated often enough, becomes part of who we are. A single prayer spoken once may stir the heart for a moment, but a prayer spoken day after day begins to dig channels through which grace can flow. What seems ordinary and even unimpressive becomes, through consistency, the very soil in which holiness grows. Human beings are creatures of rhythm. The rising of the sun, the turning of the seasons, the beating of the heart. Life itself is marked by repetition. Our actions follow the same pattern. The words we use, the thoughts we return to, the gestures we perform without thinking. These repetitions form our character. If left unchecked, they lead us into ruts of selfishness or despair. But when prayer is chosen as a repeated act, something remarkable takes place. The rhythm of prayer begins to interrupt the rhythm of sin. Instead of drifting along the path of habit toward pride, anger, or fear, the soul is redirected toward humility, patience, and trust. Consistency is the quiet force that makes this redirection possible. The first attempts at consistent prayer often feel unimpressive. One kneels or folds hands or lifts thoughts, and distractions arrive at once. The mind wanders, the words feel hollow, the heart seems dull. Yet the act of returning, of not giving up, is itself the seed of transformation. A musician does not master a piece by playing it once. An athlete does not gain strength through a single exercise. It is the repetition, the daily practice, that creates mastery. In the same way, prayer practiced consistently does not remain weak and stumbling. Over time, it deepens, sharpens, and grows in sincerity. What begins as duty becomes delight, not because the act has changed, but because the one who prays has been changed. Consistency is powerful because it works beneath the surface. We may not notice holiness growing any more than we notice a tree stretching higher each day. But just as a tree is fed constantly by unseen roots, so the soul fed constantly by prayer grows in ways invisible to the eye. Patience begins to appear in moments of irritation. Gratitude rises up in places where complaints once filled the air. Compassion stirs where indifference once lived. These are not sudden leaps, but slow unveilings, the kind only consistency can bring. There is a subtle danger in waiting for great emotions to carry prayer forward. If one prays only when the heart feels aflame, prayer will be rare and scattered. But if one chooses to pray regardless of mood, a habit is formed that no change in feeling can undo. This habit, repeated until it becomes part of life itself, is what slowly matures into holiness. Holiness is not the sudden glow of an extraordinary moment. It is the steady light of a soul trained daily to turn toward God. The extraordinary, when it comes, is built on the foundation of the ordinary, repeated faithfully. Consider how a stream of water, though soft, can carve stone when it flows day after day. Consistent prayer is much the same. Each prayer may feel small, even powerless, but as the days pass, they cut deep into the heart, shaping it in ways that no single dramatic act could achieve. The discipline of showing up, even when weary or distracted, trains the soul to rely less on its own strength and more on the grace that meets it in the act of prayer. Holiness emerges not as an achievement to boast in, but as the quiet result of having returned again and again to the source of all holiness. Habits are often thought of as chains, binding us to patterns we cannot escape. But in the realm of the Spirit, habits are ladders. Each rung may seem ordinary, yet climbed steadily, they lift the soul higher. To pray once may be beautiful. To pray consistently is to weave prayer into the very fabric of being. It ceases to be something one does and becomes something one is. The person of prayer carries holiness not as a garment occasionally worn, but as skin, inseparable and natural. The transformation of habit into holiness is not about perfection. It is not that consistent prayer makes one flawless or immune to weakness. Rather, it means that even in weakness, the soul has learned where to turn. A person who has prayed consistently will instinctively seek God in trial, just as a hand instinctively reaches for balance when stumbling. The habit has become second nature, and in that second nature holiness quietly blooms. Even the smallest prayers, when made consistent, take part in this transformation. A whispered word before sleep, a moment of silence in the morning, a repeated phrase carried through the day, these are not wasted. They are like drops of water falling on the same spot until the surface beneath is changed forever. The holiness that results is not loud or dramatic, but deep and enduring. It is the holiness that enables a soul to walk steadily through joy and sorrow alike, because prayer has become the pulse of its life. In the end, consistency in prayer works not by grand gestures but by faithful return. Each time the soul bends toward God, even clumsily, it strengthens the path of return. Each repetition weakens the pull of distraction and strengthens the pull of devotion. Over time, this steady rhythm does what no single act could ever do. It transforms mere habit into holiness, weaving the ordinary threads of daily life into a pattern touched by the eternal. The true miracle of prayer is the daily returning. The true miracle of prayer is the daily returning. Prayer is not remarkable because of its grandeur or because it always produces dramatic results that we can see. Its deepest power lies in the act of turning back, again and again, even when the heart feels heavy, the words feel dry, or the silence feels endless. The miracle is not found in a single prayer spoken once in desperation, but in the quiet faithfulness of returning day after day, choosing to keep the dialogue alive, even when everything within us suggests there is little point. That daily choice reveals more about the nature of faith and transformation than any fleeting moment of intensity. When someone returns to prayer each day, they are practicing a form of surrender. They admit, not with dramatic declarations but with steady persistence, that they cannot live life entirely on their own strength. To return daily is to acknowledge dependence, to admit that every breath, every hope, every act of endurance needs to be rooted in something greater than self. This repeated return does not make life easier, nor does it guarantee that circumstances will shift in the way we desire, but it does form the soul in humility. Each day of prayer becomes another reminder that we are creatures, not creators of our own destiny, and that to seek the presence of God is to step into the reality of our deepest need. The miracle of returning is that it reshapes the heart even when no visible result appears. Imagine a person who prays faithfully for years for something dear, a healing, a reconciliation, a breakthrough, yet sees no outward change. To the world, such persistence might appear foolish, but within the one who prays, something subtle is happening. The act of returning day after day is forming endurance, patience, and trust. The soul learns that the value of prayer is not measured by what is received, but by the one to whom it is offered. In returning, the person becomes less concerned with outcomes and more concerned with presence. The miracle is not that life bends to our will, but that our will bends toward the one who hears us. There is something profoundly human about wandering, drifting, and forgetting. Our thoughts scatter, our desires pull us in 100 directions. We are distracted by noise, tempted by ease, and weighed down by worry. Prayer is often abandoned not because it is denied, but because life presses in with urgency. And yet the miracle lies in this. Even after forgetting, even after wandering far, the door to prayer is never shut. We are always invited to return. The daily return is not just an act of discipline, but a recognition of mercy, that we are welcomed back as though we had never left. Every return to prayer, no matter how faltering, is a rediscovery of grace. The miracle also lies in the way daily returning builds intimacy. Friendships are not formed in a single meeting. They are built over countless conversations, many of which seem small or trivial. In the same way, a relationship with God is not sustained by rare moments of passion alone, but by the steady rhythm of returning. Each prayer, no matter how ordinary, is a thread woven into the tapestry of a relationship. Over time, these threads form a bond so strong that silence itself becomes meaningful, and even the simplest words are charged with depth. The daily return makes space for love to grow in ways that cannot be rushed. It is easy to look for miracles in sudden events, the unexpected healing, the dramatic answer, the striking sign, but the miracle of daily returning is quieter and deeper. It takes shape in the slow transformation of character. A person who once reacted with impatience finds themselves speaking with gentleness. Someone who once lived in constant fear begins to move with a quiet courage. A heart that once clung tightly to resentment begins to loosen its grip and forgive. These shifts may not happen overnight, but they are the fruit of countless returns to prayer, each return allowing a little more light to enter, a little more hardness to soften. Returning daily to prayer also keeps hope alive. Life can grind hope down with disappointments and losses, and without prayer the heart easily slips into despair. But when someone chooses to return, even when hope feels fragile, that act itself is a declaration that despair will not have the final word. It is a way of saying, I still believe there is someone who listens, someone who holds my days. The daily return is itself hope embodied, a hope that grows not from circumstances, but from faith that every return is noticed, every whisper heard, every silence shared. There is another dimension to the miracle of returning. It creates stability in a world of change. Circumstances shift constantly. Health fails, relationships falter, seasons come and go. But the daily act of prayer becomes an anchor. No matter how uncertain the outer life becomes, the act of returning each day provides a rhythm that cannot be taken away. This rhythm forms a kind of sanctuary in time, a place where the soul can rest in the familiar presence of God, even when everything else is unstable. The miracle is that this stability does not depend on outward success, but on the faithfulness of return. The miracle of daily returning also lies in its simplicity. It does not require eloquence, great knowledge, or extraordinary effort. To return can be as simple as lifting a quiet thought in the middle of the day, as ordinary as whispering thanks before sleep, as unnoticed as sighing for help in a moment of weakness. The power is not in the grandeur of the act, but in the persistence of it. Day after day, small prayers accumulate into something profound, shaping the soul in ways that no single grand gesture could accomplish. The miracle is not loud, but it is lasting. Ultimately, the miracle of prayer is revealed not in one extraordinary moment, but in the pattern of daily return. Each time the soul comes back, no matter how distracted, no matter how weary, it reaffirms its orientation toward the divine. Each return is like a step taken on a long pilgrimage, a journey that does not end in a moment of triumph, but continues in steady faithfulness. And though the world may not notice, though circumstances may not shift in visible ways, the true miracle remains, that the heart continues to return, and in returning, it is slowly, silently, unshakably transformed.